There's a certain recklessness to gardening, I think. I know usually that's not the word that comes to mind when you picture growing a garden. That seems, traditional, pretty mild-mannered. Planting a garden seems respectable, normal kind of thing. But I think it's a reckless act of hope to plant a garden, to spend time and labor. Just looking out here at the vegetable gardens with a couple of sunflowers growing up in them that we have here at the church, I'm thinking about the recklessness, the audacity of planting a garden, knowing all the things that could go wrong. Earlier this May, in addition to the carrots and peppers and cucumbers you might be able to see, I went out to the garden bed and got myself a packet of sunflower seeds and planted some sunflowers in the middle of those garden beds we've got here. And I'll be honest with you, within a couple of weeks, I was excited and then very, very disappointed. We had these little sprouts coming up in the centers of our garden beds, and I knew those were going to be sunflowers, but we also got rabbits in the neighborhood, and little baby sunflowers look awfully delicious. So we lost some young sunflower shoots to rabbits, and we went through a patch of a couple of weeks where there wasn't any rain at all, and even when we were watering as well as we could, some of those little sunflowers just shriveled up in the heat. But we've got some that have lasted, and I'm convinced it's worth having them. Even though it meant an awful lot of work, even though it meant vigilance, even though it meant that not every seed that was planted would grow, and even though I'm not going to be able to eat those. Those are just going to be sunflowers for beauty and for birds and the visual of it. But it's worth it. I think to garden at all is to be willing to put in energy and time and love and care, and to take the risk that some of what you do may blossom and produce a harvest and some won't, but you do it anyway because life is worth nurturing. I think about that when I hear this story Jesus tells, this really well-known story we're going to be looking at this coming Sunday. This telling of it comes from Matthew's gospel, and it starts like this. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Such great crowds gathered around him that he got into the boat and sat there, while the whole crowd listened and stood on the beach. And he said to them many things in parables, saying, "Listen, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seed fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil, since they sprang up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Let anyone with ears listen." And Jesus then goes on to explain, as Matthew tells it, that this is sort of a way of talking about the reign of God and the way God operates in the world. God sort of sends out the word, the message from God into the world, and God takes the risk that in some places people are just going to turn their nose at, not interested. Other people are going to go, yeah, and then without any substance just sort of fade away. Other people are going to find that this good thing that's been placed in their hands gets snatched away by the powers of evil in the world. But some places it takes root and it grows and it blossoms and it comes to fruition and it produces a harvest. And the thing that gets me is, as far as Jesus is concerned, God believes it's worth it to go through all that work, all that labor, all of what might look like foolishness, recklessness, wasted energy, because it's worth nurturing life wherever it's going to take root. One of the things that I find so challenging but also deeply necessary about this story is it reminds me how little you and I are in control of what God's up to in the world. We might have this way, like we do with garden beds, of these will be the exact spaces that plants will grow. It will grow here and not here. We'll get this here. This is the harvest. This is what we'll expect. And here, God's way in the world tends to be much more broadcasting. Much more, we'll throw it in every direction and we'll see something amazing will happen here. You might expect something good here. Maybe it will come to fruition. Maybe it won't. All we can do is keep throwing out that seed in every direction and letting God's word do what it will in hearts all around us. That makes it hard to do business planning as the church. It makes it hard to know, well, we will exactly get this much profit from over here. We'll see this much value come back from our investments of time and energy here. We'll get this much of return of our investment of talent and time and energy. And instead, Jesus says that's not how God operates. God can't be reduced to budgets and spreadsheets, and God can't be reduced to control of how God's word will work in the world. Our calling, if we're going to be a part of God's work in the world, is simply to pass around the word Jesus gives us, the invitation, the love, the grace, wherever we find ourselves, without saying, oh, I don't think those people are ever going to come to church. This news is not for them. Or, oh my goodness, your life, you're too screwed up. You certainly aren't eligible for God's love or God's grace. Or, well, these people are perfect because they're just like us. Certainly, they'll become good, faithful church members. We should recruit them. That's not how it works. Instead, the way God operates in the world is with this joyful abundance, this reckless sense of throw the seed everywhere and see what comes. It's worth the energy, it's worth the time, it's worth even looking foolish in the world to nurture life wherever it's going to sprout up. That means, too, in the course of this week, you and I are going to have countless possibilities to share God's love with somebody else around us. And we don't get control over what return we get for our investment, whether somebody comes back and says thank you, whether somebody has a life-changing experience because of your words or not, whether it takes years and years and years for somebody to realize that your presence made a difference in their life. Who knows whether people will come to our church, or people will do great deeds, or people will grow up and have certain outcomes in their lives because of your presence or our work together. You never know those things. You keep throwing seed, trusting that life is worth nurturing wherever it's going to blossom. That means that every day brings something of an adventure. Every day is going to feel something like, I don't know where this is going to go. Something kind of, reckless. Except it's not just confined to sunflowers and cucumbers and tomatoes, but with the ways we share God's love everywhere, in every direction, with everybody we meet, knowing that it's up to God what's going to come of it. Can we dare to say, I'm willing to share God's love. I'm willing to share the news of Jesus. I'm willing to share this life that I find compelling and good, come what may. That's the conversation we're having this Sunday, and we invite you to be a part of it. See you then.